All right, the first quote I'm going to read is from by Ariel Dorfman, who is a famous Chilean author. His most well-known book, I guess, is Death and a Maiden, which talks about a woman who had been tortured and encounters this torture later and ties him up in a chair and considers killing him, but it doesn't tell you whether or not she did. Anyway, it's an incredible story, and it's been put on as a play frequently. He said, "Missing changed everything for the Chilean resistance abroad. Before the film opened, whenever I would meet somebody regarding the dictatorship, and we're talking about congresspeople, influencers, sympathizers with our cause who could give us financial aid for La Lucha, I would use up a good part of the scant time afforded me to explain the situation in Chile, so hardly any time was left to explain what we needed. After Costa brought out this film, I remember meeting you for the first time in the Estreno in DC. Anyway, I would simply ask, have you seen Missing? The answer was inevitably yes, and then, well, that's the sort of repression and lies and terror we are fighting against. But think, I added, of all those who are disappeared but are not American, who do not have a film this magnificent to denounce their tragedy. Please help us to stop our country from becoming desaparecido." And more often than not, I got the support I was looking for. End of quote about Missing. He also said something about Charlie, who was, there was a plaque made just 2 or 3 months ago of journalists who were killed in the coup. And Charlie's name was added to that. There are about 40 names. And so Ariel Dorfman says, "It is heartbreaking and also heart-creating that Charlie is there on this plaque of journalists killed. He was a Taurus, a condition I share with him. He was born 11 days after I was born. And one of the supposed qualities of those born under the sign of the bull is loyalty. And he was loyal to himself and to the country where he died, and to its cause. And like a good Taurus, he wouldn't stop once he was convinced he needed to go on. I never met him. I did meet Frank, but I dare to suggest that he would smile at his inclusion along so many who paid with their lives for expressing their beliefs and investigating forbidden areas of reality. And if he knew what Missing did to bring down Pinochet, the smile might get slightly larger." End of second quote. I love those 2 quotes. Now, I have written something up, so before I let you ask questions, is it all right if I take 8 minutes and read this other thing?
No,
Okay.
that's why we blocked out some time.
Oh, all right. I think many movies over the years have moved the consciousness of social justice. Or you know what, I need my glasses, hold on just a second. Many movies over the years have moved the consciousness of social justice forward, step by step. But only a few have helped a broad humanity leap from a lower sense of justice to a more advanced reasoning of right and wrong. Missing by Costa Gavras is one of those rare films that impacted a global audience, including United States citizenry, concerning crimes against humanity and the need for justice. On September 11th, 1973, the long-standing democracy in Chile was overthrown by its military forces with the covert assistance of the United States. undermining Salvador Allende's duly elected democratic socialism and installing General Augusto Pinochet, a brutal dictator. 9 years later, Costa Gavras' film Missing exposed the violence, torture, murder, and destruction of law and order under Pinochet's dictatorship. And in doing so, it lifted the lid of silence that had persisted after the coup for those 9 years, which helped cover up and excuse the actions of Pinochet's forces. The profile and importance of international human rights blossomed after the coup in the diaspora of expelled Chileans, and then was boosted by the release of Missing. It brought to life a global awareness regarding the lawlessness and human cruelty permeating Chile from its September 1973 coup. The movie provided unity of thought and message for many Chilean refugee communities and gave them a broader voice in the world for their cries of justice. A movie doesn't make a huge difference by itself alone, but over time it can influence by reaching, informing, and inspiring many justice-minded people throughout the world. Missing is one example of why performing arts are so important to humanity's betterment. The raised global consciousness brought many actions that enlarged the support and scope of courts of justice in various countries. Today, more of the world's population believes that justice is not only necessary and attainable, but is vigorously supported in various forms in many countries. As such, justice vehicles, such as treaties, courts, lawyers, support groups, have proliferated, not necessarily with the power needed to punish all crimes against humanity, but to hold accountable and put on trial some of the worst offending despots and dictators. Some have been brought to court in various countries. Pinochet himself was brought to trial in England in 1998 by various international judges, judicial rulings, treaties, which ultimately disallowed sovereign immunity for crimes against humanity, i.e. punishable now, and verified the Spanish extradition request to send Pinochet to Spain to stand trial. The long judicial process, however, bolstered and amplified the principle of universal jurisdiction, which supports that any tyrant not being tried in his or her own country can be tried for human rights crimes by any court in the world. Our sense of justice in today's world has been and is being nurtured by various forms of performing arts. They shape and augment our mental well-being and hopes for a better, more lawful world. This is not meant to diminish in any way the extraordinarily important work of the lawyers and justices who pushed forward accountability for human rights crimes. Just saying, Missing provided an enormous spark to this process. I do not write this letter unselfishly. I write from the heart because this movie amplified our plea for justice and continued to do so over so many years. I'm grateful for Missing, brought by Costa Gavras' inspiration, commitment, and direction, and also for the courage of the actors who undertook to film this story while Pinochet forces were assassinating perceived foes in countries around the world. I'm especially grateful to Sissy Spacek and Jack Lemmon, who with Costa unfolded our story so that the entire world could understand the personal anguish caused by this violent overthrow of democracy. Thank you. Thank you.
Where did the letter go?
To you. I just wrote it. But I did want to say how important Missing was to me. Ariel Dorfman says it in a fifth of the words, but it takes me a little longer. And I'm happy to answer any questions any of you have about the movie. Yes.
All through the movie, I kept thinking of Hannah Arendt
And
Say again?
all,
Hold on.
all through the movie, I
Mhm.
kept thinking about Hannah Arendt and the banality of evil. And I say to myself at least once a day, gee, now we can see how easy it is to get another Hitler.
How easy it is to get another,
another Hitler.
yes,
You lived it directly. And you're prescient about what's going on now. I'd like to hear your comments on your experience then, which is interestingly, we're talking about 9/11, which is coming
Right.
up again. I'd like to know how you feel about what is going on in the United States of America vis-a-vis what you experienced there, because I see so many parallels.
well, I think it's terribly important that what Pinochet did was to privatize, to cut funding to social programs, and to make it difficult to express yourself. I think that is happening now. And it's wonderful that a socialist could have been elected in Chile, and I am terrified that a fascist will be elected in the United States. I am terrified. It doesn't all correspond to what I experienced reflected in this movie. What I experienced was the heroism of some people like Ed Horman, which was terrific.
But I think if there was social media in your, when
If
that
there
happened,
was what?
social media,
Yes?
so it would have been more parallel. In other words, it's quicker. It can happen more quickly now and with more knowledge. Have you ever thought about talking to people, let's say like I read 5 books about Trump. The last one was by Bob Woodward. Have you ever thought about talking to any of these journalists who wrote these Trump books and telling them your story? Because
Well,
make a fabulous interview.
pardon?
You would make a fabulous interview.
Oh,
You could
thank you. Thank you very much.
You could educate so many people.
You know, there's actually a lot going on about education. There is a book, and oh, please help me. It's recent, and it talks about how, what is it? The Empire's Workshop. I think that's the name of the book. It's how the United States has learned so much from meddling in Latin America. They have learned that this works, that doesn't work, and I'm telling you, El Mercurio, which was the main newspaper in Santiago at that time, was filled with terrifying fright for the middle classes. The propaganda was horrific, and of course, the sabotage of by the truck drivers and, well, this, it was economic sabotage by the U.S. really, but also by the middle class in Chile. So I've lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh yeah, a lot of people have written about what's happening and how the U.S. gleaned a lot of experience about how to influence people by their interventions in Latin America. And what we see in Fox News these days is really quite extraordinary. That is straight out propaganda to my mind. But I appreciate your wonderful suggestion. I think more people have to speak out very loudly about what we can see happening in the United States today.
I think, Joyce, another thing everybody should realize here is that you are still on the case, basically, here, right? And this case has not been resolved. It has not been, nobody's been identified still as the perpetrator.
It's really been difficult to get to the bottom of everything, and it's still difficult. I did hear that AOC went to Chile and wants to open up some investigations, or demand more documents, you know, I haven't followed it as closely as I might. But I actually wrote a letter, couple of letters to Bernie and the senators from California and Illinois, before one retired and Bernie ran for president, saying that the military intelligence really needs to be investigated. Somebody has to ask those agencies who knew what when, and nobody has done that. Especially to my mind, the Navy, Department of Navy has never been asked what Captain Davis's role was, or was meant to be, or was, you know, what he was directed, or what he did on his own. That all needs to be asked of the Department of Navy.
Or Mr. Babcock, or whoever he may be, whether he's CIA or naval intelligence or freelance of some kind of that actor embodied that beautifully too. Richard Bradford.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. Oh, I just think it's brilliant. I am so grateful for this movie. So grateful. Otherwise, I would be telling the story over and over again. And I might not be here, you know, having to do that. It's just exhausting. And so this movie does it, and it does it not just for me, it does it for a lot of Chileans. So my gratitude is huge.
Store where the man said, "Get out of here because you were far." Was that?
I hid in a stairwell, and I did not see a white horse.
Oh.
That also is theatrical.
Joyce,
Yes?
Peter has a question.
I think it's important to remember that the reason the case did not go to trial was that the U.S. government took the position that it couldn't be tried without revealing national secrets.
Ah,
And if that remains the law, there is a lot of work to do.
there is a lot of work to be done. Absolutely.
You should say who Peter is.
What?
Is Peter talking about the Bible piece?
Yes. Peter is the lead lawyer on the case against Kissinger from the Center for Constitutional Rights. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, and thank you. I didn't get to name him because I said Center for Constitutional Rights, but he is a hero. He is absolutely a hero.
And here's another hero.
Yes, and Nancy Stearns was on the case as well. Please, thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joyce.
I'm sorry, I don't know who's talking.
It's Peter saying thank you.
For the work that you have done since since the coup, because she has done it with absolute passion for creating a law in this country that does not permit permit crimes against humanity,
Right,
so-called.
it's correct, and the United States still has not signed on to the International Criminal Court, is that correct?
That's correct.
We know
Right.
why.
Yeah, because Henry would be there.
Also,
Deborah?
isn't there an update? The film ends, when the film ends, it says that the trials didn't go forward or that nothing happened because there wasn't enough. Oh, thank you. I think when the film ends, I don't remember exactly what the narration says, but that narration is out of date now, right? Because there was after that a the settlement in the case you brought against Kissinger. Could you
No,
update us?
not in
No?
the case against Kissinger. I took the case to Chile when Pinochet was returned from London, and Fabiola Letelier and Sergio Corvalán took our case for wrongful death of Charles Horman, and another hero, Juan Guzman Tapia, was the judge and did all sorts of investigation in that case. He was just wonderful, and he was also pressured out of office. He was retired early because there was so much, nobody, when he was named to be the prosecutor of Pinochet, when Pinochet came back to Chile, he was from the class of Chileans that didn't think it was a terrible thing that the coup happened. And he, because of his honesty and integrity, he investigated the charges that were brought. Because some charges were strengthened because of Pinochet's 18 months in London and that he had to be tried. Other cases came forward at that time. And so Guzman was extremely thorough. He was precise about the evidence he went for, and he was, like I said, retired, but he did a lot of important work. And he also had arrested Pinochet, and he indicted and said Pinochet was guilty. You know, in Chile, the judge not only sits and listens, he investigates and he rules. And so Juan Guzman Tapia actually ruled that Pinochet was guilty. He was indicted and he was guilty. He did not get prosecuted, he did not get jailed, but his house arrest was extended.
Was his house
Then
called Mar-a-Lago?
Pinochet, pardon?
Was his house called Mar-a-Lago?
No, interesting though. I was gonna say one other thing about that. The second judge, now I'm running out of gas, I guess. The second judge actually closed the case in 2016, and there were 2 of the 7 defendants, is that the right word? Who were left living, and they were, one was already given life in prison for human rights crimes, and the other one was, because of his age, given some pat on the, really didn't stay in jail. He didn't go to jail, he didn't stay in jail, he was pardoned, or something like that. Anyway, so that took a long time, but in the realm of any awards that were given for cases decided in Chile, our award sets some precedent. It's nothing compared to what happens here when somebody found guilty, but it was a precedent in Chile. It was very important that we were compensated, and our lawyers got some for all their decades of work. I'm sorry.
I wanted to, I'm Chilean, and I lived during the Pinochet dictatorship, and I just wanted to thank you for bringing your story to light and for bringing missing to life. My
Here I
uncle,
got the movie.
my uncle was tortured and executed.
What?
September 17,
Who
1973.
was that?
My uncle.
Your uncle?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
But
I'm
what I
so
wanted to
sorry.
say to you, thank you, is that this movie, while we weren't allowed to watch it, in the
Chile,
80s
it
in
was
Chile,
banned.
I learned of it from my family that was exiled
Uh-huh,
in Sweden.
wonderful.
And it helped trigger what later came, a movement and voices rising and a loss of fear, if you will, for
Yes,
speaking out. And so,
Wonderful.
thank you. Thank you for
Oh.
doing that.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
May I ask a quick question? That, the horse, the white horse.
Yes.
so, Was the scene when you were out after the curfew, where you were asked to leave or told to leave by the guy who owned the bridal shop, was that real? Was it really a bridal
It
shop
was
or not?
a change. There was a great story about one of the tanks being made of cardboard just to imitate what they looked like. And some car came around the corner and bumped it and it fell apart. Anyway, I don't remember which tank that was, but we were invited down to Mexico when they were nearing the completion of this movie. Costa did not invite us to start out because he wanted the actors to deal with the story as they thought proper. And so we came down, we were invited at the end and got to meet everyone. And wow, what enthusiasm that crew had for doing this story. They were wonderful. And I was already being grateful that this movie was being made. Actually, when Costa came on, Z was both Charlie and my favorite movie. So, when Costa came on, I was there.
I think also the film was made in early 1981 when Reagan was just coming into office. They probably weren't even aware of it initially
Right.
until it was released the
And
following year.
Charlie talks about the Wall Street Journal. He was translating the articles. Did he ever write about Milton Friedman?
Did he ever write about
Milton Friedman?
Milton Friedman? Did Charlie write about Milton Friedman? I don't think so. There was a lot written about him afterwards because the Chicago boys and their neoliberalism were really put the practice in place there and learned a lot from privatization and from reducing expenditures on social programs and influencing the media and all that. Yes. And I think there's
Time for one more question because
Yeah.
we've got another show coming in at 6 o'clock, the film called No, which some of you
Oh,
may be
that's
familiar
right.
with,
Is
which deals
that
with Chile
correct?
15 years later, so.
Just a question, is
Go ahead.
this film going to be disseminated in the theaters? I mean, what's the status of the?
To use that the next
No.
I didn't
Great question.
Can you repeat the question?
But you know what I loved about Sissy? I wasn't sure she was right. You know, well, I wasn't sure anybody was right. But when I saw the movie and the audience applauded and stood up and said yes, then I knew everybody was right. But the Sissy Spacek thing, my mother loved her. So, so there you go.
Now Joyce, if you want to, downstairs, if you want to stick around, we could continue this conversation downstairs, but that's up to you.
I think not. But thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.